All right, hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar, The Power of Project Management Leadership. I am Melanie Mitchell, the Corporate Business Manager here at Oregon State's Professional and Continuing Education Unit. We call ourselves PACE. This webinar is brought to you by PACE, and PACE is a part of the Division of Outreach and Engagement here at Oregon State. Our mission and the mission of Outreach and Engagement is to connect Oregon State, the state's only land-grant university, to the rest of the world by making educational programs accessible wherever and whenever people need to learn. So that's really wanted to drive home today. Our courses and workshops and services meet educational needs of professionals and hobbyists, and we offer high quality, let me go to the next slide. We offer high quality and continuing education programs that are designed for different people across different professions and organizations. Yep, that's right. We have the ability to train your employees on site at your location, either on site or online, a training that helps fit your organizational needs and your schedule. And we really are built on partnerships, and partnerships provide amazing opportunities for our professional students and continuing ed in general to advance their careers and foster professional development and benefits to the community of all shapes and sizes. And so PACE is committed to bringing the best of Oregon State to all people and all ages across industries. And we're really proud of partnering with organizations and people across the nation to do just that. So I want to introduce you to a great partner of mine, a teacher, a coach, and an expert of his craft, Laszlo Retvalvi, a principal at Retvalvi and Associates. Laszlo is a results-driven leader with extensive private and public industry experience, enabled IT projects, risk, subcontracts, engineering integration, PMOs, and day-to-day business operations in complex product, system, platform, and service environments. His expertise lies in risk management, both internal process and business operation environments that focus on compliance. He has successfully managed and delivered products, systems, services to Navy, Army, Air Force, paramilitary, public, government, and private customers across the nation. Laszlo is an author of The Power of Project Management Leadership, your guide on how to achieve outstanding results. And you can get that book at pmsleadership.com or amazon.com. And it is really my professional Bible, and I reference excerpts from his book daily. So Laszlo is going to speak with you today about project management and where and why the role of project managers is vital to an organization. And I have personally learned so much from Laszlo, and I'm excited for you to learn more about leadership qualities and how to attain higher amounts of success on project ventures from him today. So Laszlo, thank you and welcome.
Melanie, thank you very much. Do I have control of the slides?
Yeah, let me get that for you. Go ahead.
All right, so before I start, thank you for the warm welcome. My God, you put a lot into my background, and I really appreciate that. I do have to admit, I have been around, and that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about what I do, because I like to share that with individuals and organizations. But I'm pleased to be here with you, your team, and OSU, and thank you for taking the time for pulling all this together. It takes a lot of work, and we recognize that. I've included some contact information at the end, and if there are some further questions later on, feel free to drop me an email or visit the website, and we'll address your questions. And as you mentioned, there's also an opportunity for integration of comments here, and if there are any questions, feel free to actually use the chat feature and type in your questions. I mean, this webinar is about learning, and it's all about interactions, and any questions and all questions are in fact encouraged. So here's the agenda for today. We've got just under an hour, and hopefully we'll do it in less than that. I'll just review the agenda real quickly. First of all, the key takeaways. These are the things I want you to remember. Even though we're going to go through a lot of material, these are the 3 or 4 bullets that I really want you to remember when you walk away. In terms of the background, we will review why individuals in project management struggle with the whole concept of leadership and how this affects team performance. Under what happened, whether we realize it or not, there's been a shift in project management. It started off as being relatively straightforward. Now we have these huge, mega complex projects. And in all that, the project manager has been lost, and the people that are working with the project manager. So this will address a little bit of what happened. In terms of the challenges, is these complex projects that I just mentioned, is how do we actually become an outstanding project manager in our field with all these complexities around us? We'll talk about project management leadership, and this is really what the whole book is about that I wrote, and some of the information that's in there. We review the project management leadership model. Now, this is a model that I developed with consulting with other individuals, and it's what actually the whole book is based on. It's including a model and the ability to self-evaluate yourself against that model to determine what you really need to do in order to succeed. And then we'll review the key takeaways that we mentioned at the beginning, a quick summary, and as I mentioned, the contact information, just in case we run out of time. There we go. Oh, Melanie, I don't think I have control at my end here.
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
There
So
you
before
go.
we start here, here's the book. It was I won't dwell on it too much. It was one of my bucket list items that I wanted to do, and I managed to do that over the last couple of years while trying to keep a full-time job and everything else. But the important thing about this one, though, is what I've learned prior to actually starting this webinar is it actually will be at PMI Global Conference in Phoenix in a couple of weeks as part of their library. So I'm very pleased with that. The other point I want to point out is it's not a textbook. It's actually a very, very easy read. You can read cover to cover in about 2 hours. It's actually designed for that, for actually people that travel, that by the time you get on, that you get off the aircraft, that you've already read the book. So it's actually a very light read, and so far the results in terms of reviews and comments back have been very, very positive. So I'm actually very pleased with that. So real quick, just a warm-up question here. So let's take a few moments here to discuss the following. So in your experience, Melanie, and the ones that are online, is what are leadership qualities that you would look for in a project manager, or if you don't work with a project manager, somebody else that you may interact with that resonate with you? Any ideas on leadership qualities that you feel are important?
Putting me on the spot, I would say communication, I feel is key to the success of projects and a success of a good leader. And I always go back to a part in your book when you talk about clear communication and really communicating with clarity. And that resonated with me, but I'm excited to see what others have to say.
Communications is a good one, yes. For the ones that are online, any thoughts?
So you can use your chat feature to chat your thoughts on a leadership quality.
All right, well, let me hit on ones that were actually quite common that I raised by other individuals. One of them is honesty. Honesty is by far the most popular. Some use the term inspiring. Others use the term caring, perhaps cooperative, dependable. We all have different ideas on what leadership is. But in their bestseller, though, The Leadership Challenge by Kuntz and Posner, if you ever have a chance to actually get your hands on that book, The Leadership Challenge, I highly recommend that you make it part of your library because it's a very, very good book. But they did do a survey, a huge survey. Actually, they've done it many, many times with a lot of people. And the top 4 characteristics of admired leaders were, as I mentioned before, number 1 was honest. Second one was forward-looking, the ability to look forward and have vision. Third one was inspiring. Leaders are seen as being inspiring. And the other one, which is a little bit of a surprise when you speak with the project management community, for the whole concept of being competent. And we generally think that we are competent, but here The point is that you always have to maintain your competency. It's not something that you just get it once and you forget about it. You have to keep on building it. And it turns out that 89% of the people selected honesty, which is quite an amazing number. But how does that apply to project management? The book itself was written for general management terms, but how does that apply for project management? Well, let's learn some more. So let's take a look at the key takeaways. So first of all, this is fundamental. Management and leadership are not the same. They're in fact different, and we'll review why they are different. Second thing is it actually takes true leadership to drive today's aggressive and complex projects. So for the fact that we're having a webinar here over the internet, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't even something that we even thought we could do. To give you an idea of how complex it was to develop this, now we take it for granted. Same with the complex buildings that we have around us, the complex projects, the big energy plants and so forth. Generally, those projects run into issues. They're difficult, they're tough, and it requires true leadership to get them through. And the next one is when you take a look at what it takes to be an outstanding project manager, and that's a term that I use as part of the book, is there are several components and attributes that allow you to become this. And that's covered under something that I referred to before as a project management leadership model. So when I refer to as an outstanding project manager, really what I'm referring to is somebody who has mastered project management and leadership, and they know how to apply both at the same time. So the bottom line in all this is leadership is no longer optional. It's no longer optional project management skill. It's a key part of being a successful and respected project manager. And this is really a very, very important concept to remember is it's not about necessarily having all the technical project management skills. It's about combining leadership with being a project manager. And the thing I want you to walk away with is you need to get in touch with the bottom line. And when I speak to project managers and I refer to this slide, I remind them then again and again that it's no longer optional. It's actually expected out of a project manager when it comes to actually hiring a project manager. It's expected in job requisitions and so forth. And we'll touch on that a little bit later on. So let's take a look at a bit of background here. Perhaps you've seen this in your day-to-day activities. So while the project manager or somebody who's involved in project management may be focused on what needs to be done and may well know how to get the job done, he or she may not be acting as a leader. And perhaps, as I mentioned before, you've seen this in your work. Sometimes when you take on this get-it-done attitude, we actually go too far and we actually cause team morale to suffer. It's one thing to be motivated and get something done. It's another thing to do it in a way that focuses on your leadership skills so that you actually have a team around you. So many organizations struggle to define what I refer to as observable leadership behaviors that they expect from a project manager. Now, Melanie, you may have perhaps seen this, and perhaps others can check where they work, but every organization defines what they expect out of a project manager or a project leader or a project coordinator in a different manner. There's a lot of variability. And this is what really drove me to do this research on the book, because I got frustrated with this variability. Because no matter where I went or where I dealt with, they all had a different idea of what to expect out of the project manager. And I thought that perhaps we could actually streamline this to get it down to about 25 or 30 items which are continually the same, and they are there no matter what field that you're in. I think I may have lost control here again. Melanie? Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, got it. And it also applies to the people that work with project managers. They often don't understand what is expected of them or what is expected of their project manager. And this actually causes some grief. And this disconnect in expectations greatly hampers project performance. It causes team frustration, and it erodes trust and confidence. The point I want to make here is you cannot afford to erode any trust and confidence in your team. Without this, you will fail, because without a team, it's very difficult to get any work done at all. So what happened? Let's take a look at what happened over the last 10, 15 years. So now we have email and instant communications, and everybody's email is a priority. Now we're actually really challenged when it comes to time management and determining who we should answer and not answer. We've got numerous standards, guidelines, and methodologies on how we should do things. This is extremely prevalent in the IT sector, where many standards as they apply to security and personal information acts and so forth. Many standards, and at times they actually confuse each other and they conflict each other. We now have countless software tools, each promising project success. In the area of project management, things like scheduling tools and presentation tools and these time management tools. Everybody's promoting a tool and it'll fix whatever problem we're having, and that's in fact incorrect. They help you, but they don't necessarily fix everything. We have global virtual teams, and if our little webinar here is actually a team, that's what we are. We're actually kind of global. I'm in Ottawa in Canada, speaking with Melanie in Oregon. I mean, this is actually an international kind of conversation, and it's not unusual to run projects this way. We have social media groups just for about any problem. What I find more and more is people just go on the web and they look up a problem, or they ask somebody for advice, and they just assume that the answer is correct, and they go with it. And we have to be very careful in that area. Time management challenges, I mentioned that before. You know, our day really isn't ours, and it tends to run away on us. What used to be an 8-hour day now is more like 10, 12, 16 hours. And I was just actually reading up on a statistic having to do with BlackBerries, and they actually use the term BlackBerry, but it applies to Apple or whatever device you may have in your hand. But most people now spend about 3 hours on the device a day, and they feel lost if they can't use it in 15 minutes. That's amazing. So now technology and tools that I mentioned before seems to be more important than the skills that we have, because it's very easy to look up things, and we pretend that we have the skills when in fact we don't. So what happens is there's been a shift, in fact a huge shift, and the shift is centered around the fact that the art of being a project manager is slowly being lost. And that's because the older generation used to do things in a much more one-on-one type of approach, and now when you combine all these things under the what happened header, we have to react differently. We have to treat our teams differently, and this is where leadership comes in. So I would say that the focus has shifted from technical project management skills, and the focus is now needs to come back on the leadership side of things, and this is where we need to change. So here's a challenge. And I mentioned this before. We struggle on trying to determine what the behaviors are of a successful project manager. Now, I use the term broadly here. Even though I use the term project manager, it applies to the junior levels all the way up to the executives, as well as people that deal with project managers. For those who've actually done research, and I'm sure you've seen this in your day-to-day activities, there are numerous models that exist on the behaviors that are expected. You can even do a very quick search on the internet. You'll get many responses back. The issue is they're not very practical. Having run very large departments in the past, it's always been my challenge to explain to the people that work for me what I've expected out of them and setting the expectations. And I was always given material from our HR department or for some other departments who were very complex and very difficult to apply. So what is really required here is something very straightforward and basic that can be used over and over again. Now, training and certification is very important when it comes to project management. This webinar would be part of that, but it doesn't really apply in fixing everything. And this is where true leadership comes in to play, because this is something that certification does not provide. It's something that you have to learn on the side and it's something that you actually have to train for. So what makes a project manager an outstanding project manager? The term I was referring to, well, it's actually quite simple. The secret is in how well they have mastered project management leadership. Now you'll start seeing me use the term project management leadership as a whole, and here's a reason why, and let's learn some more about that. So here's an example. This is a study that was done in Australia, and it had to do with issuing of job ads in professional publications looking for project managers. And a study was done where first they found these ads, and then what they did is they actually did a count of the different competencies that were asked for in each of the ads, and turned that into a percentage. So you'll notice, for example, communication was number 1 for a project manager's job. Technical skills was number 2. This is the interesting part. Leadership came in number 8. Now, that is a very, very important observation to note here. And you ask yourself, well, why is that? Well, part of the reason is it's very difficult to articulate on paper what we expect leadership to be when it comes to project management. And I would argue that it would probably include things like communications, like Melanie mentioned, or perhaps cost management, or perhaps planning. And this is where industry and the rest of the world kind of differ a little bit. In terms of the ads, leadership ranked number 8, but in terms of industry and the people that teach and the people that do the knowledge forums and so forth, we recognize that it needs to be number 1. So even though we insist that we need it, we can't articulate it, and it becomes number 8 when it actually goes out in part of a job description, and that's a big problem. And it shows you the confusion that we're dealing with. We can't seem to articulate leadership, and hopefully the next couple of slides will help with that. So another question. So let's take a few moments and review the following. So in your experience, how effective are the leadership skills of the project managers, and if you don't work with project managers, of the individuals you work with? How effective are they? And do you see any areas that perhaps there's a need for improvement? Melanie, any thoughts on that?
I think that currently we have several project managers on our team, and I feel that those communications are very effective, but I think always can seek improvement. And I think that's where I really resonate with the clarity, because everybody's working on a separate project, but they all integrate, and understanding what what it is that we need to know about the separate project. So I think clarity, and not just communicating to continue to move the needle forward, but communicating with clarity so that we're all on the same page is key. So always improvements are eager, and I'm excited to share this learning with my team as well today.
Great. So perhaps of the ones that are on the webinar, if you have any comments as well.
I see Stephanie has her hand raised. Let's see if we can figure out how.
Yeah, I unfortunately I can't see this from my control panel, but
okay.
If you could repeat the question.
She doesn't have a question listed, just her hand is up. So I'm trying to figure out how I can release. Let me see if I can release her microphone. Stephanie, did you have a question, or Emily? I think you both are unmuted if you wanted to talk a little bit about leadership skills you've seen, or individuals that you've worked with, or how effective their skills have been. All right.
Oh, that's okay.
You can share your expertise with us, Laszlo. Thank you.
So this is where this is actually another article that I read, which I found fascinating, right? Is that 75% of respondents to this one type of survey cited that leadership is a skill necessary for success for managing projects with high complexity, and only 12% thought that technical project management skills or business skills were required. again, it shows that, first of all, we agree that leadership is very, very important, but we can't seem to articulate it, and in some cases, we don't understand what we're looking for when we discuss leadership with individuals we work with. One item that really sticks out to me when it comes to leadership is the ability to trust somebody. There's nothing more motivating for me than to actually line myself up behind a leader that I trust, because we're going to do great things together and we're going to cover each other off. And that to me is very, very important, and that's what I look for, and there's always an opportunity to improve in the area of trust. All right, let's keep on going. So let's go over a couple of definitions. First of all, let's discuss about management. So management stems from the Latin word manugere, which means to lead by the hand. And it's a term that's so broad these days that it's just become an accepted daily term. If we expand on that and define project management, and we can use PMI PMBOK definition here, the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. That's relatively straightforward. But here's a good question, though, is what differentiates a project manager from another? Well, it includes different things, aspects like planning, budgeting, communications, Melanie again, and you mentioned clear and concise, and there's a number of others as well. But when you read the little circle at the side there where it says half project manager, half ninja, what I found from experience is project managers actually succeed by their sheer tenacity. Sometimes they just keep on going and going and going until the project is done. And we tend to forget about these individual aspects we spoke about, because we tend to roll up our sleeves and get it done. As a result of that, though, however, sometimes team morale, as I mentioned before, can actually be hurt. So let's take a look at an alternative definition. It's a very simple one. Project managers plan, manage, and handle details in a way that lets project stakeholders, in other words, others, relax. And that's really it in a nutshell. If I have a project manager who's working on a project for me, I want to relax, and I want to understand that he or she has everything under control. And if he or she has everything under control, then I can relax. It's a very straightforward definition. So let's take a look at leadership. Now, this is one of those terms which, quite frankly, is just like management, it's a little bit overused. It's become a catch-all, and as a result of that, it's lost its clarity and true meaning. But really, it's about establishing direction and influencing others to want to follow that direction. So it involves change. And the thing about change is it's about people, and change affects people. It's all about people. Therefore, leadership is about people. And this is what leaders tend to overlook. It's about the people. Good leaders, excellent leaders, always care about their people. And this is what differentiates a good leader from a mediocre leader. But now, leadership has become so important because the world itself is full of change. And we just mentioned that in order to do that, you have to have leadership. So as part of the whole change that's going on around us, we need leadership. So there's been a lot of research done on this, and I've read a large number of books, and in one of them, there was this classification of leaders, and there were over, I don't know, 15 or so classifications of the types of leadership in the past 15 years. And that's a tough one to take, actually, because you try to figure out which one you actually fit in. Oh, I think I may have lost control again, Melanie.
There you go.
And it's no wonder that PMs struggle with this, because where do they line up when it comes to leadership? What should they actually be like when it comes to being a leader? So here's a very simple definition that I put forward. Right? The true measure of whether someone is a leader is whether they have willing followers. And following a leader implies that it's voluntary. You want to do it. Now, this is a little bit different than project teams, because sometimes you get assigned to project teams and you have to do it. Leadership takes it one step further. You'll want to do it. An outstanding project manager doesn't really have to market himself or herself to look for people. People will want to work with them and on their projects because they really like working with that individual. And all this is based on your ability to inspire trust and confidence. Remember, I mentioned this before. You can't afford to erode trust and confidence. You have to work very, very hard to build it. But once you have it, though, it's your key to success. So let's review project management leadership. Right? We mentioned that project management is about planning, controlling, and managing complex projects. Leadership is about having a visionary view, a stance, and guiding people through the change. But really, when it comes to project management leadership, part of the secret here is that both are actually necessary for success in today's business environment. Not one, not the other, but both. And a very simple way of showing it is by this diagram. Two boxes then merge to the bottom one. And now you see that we use both terms, project management leadership. And let's build on this. And I mentioned part of the secret here. Oh, the animations were a little bit slow. So what do we mean by part of the secret? Well, let's take a look at that on the next slide. So what do we mean by part of the secret? Well, we just mentioned that project management leadership is a juxtaposition of two terms that brought together. We need both. But here is what industry and research has shown us is projects need more of project management leadership. Teams definitely required more because we can't execute a project without a team. Stakeholders expect more and more these days. If you follow project management, it's about stakeholder engagement and how do we make sure that we deliver value to our stakeholders. And at the end of the day, industry simply demands more. They've raised the bar. As the projects have become more complex, leadership is now part of it. So as part of raising this bar, we have to develop what we call an outstanding project manager. And this is really the premise of the book and the material in the book. So when it comes to the project management leadership side, you can notice in the box we have the project management skills and the leadership skills, and we brought that together to make that leadership. But we're missing something, and this is where the project management leadership model takes a different route. We need, as part of leadership, to emphasize on risk and accountability. These two items are actually game changers, and they need to be emphasized. Sorry here, I just have to take a little bit of a drink. I'm fighting a cold. But one could argue that risk and accountability are part of leadership skills, but they need to be brought out because they are so critical to success that they're actually game changers. So the project management leadership model builds on 4 items: project management skills, leadership, risk, and accountability, because they in fact are different than leadership skill. So let's learn some more. So what we've done here is actually taken the previous very simple diagram and rolled it into this nice little diagram known as the project management leadership model, which is really what the book is based on. And let me kind of walk you through it. First of all, it's a circle with arrows on the outside, which means it's recursive. It's something that we continually have to improve on. In the center, we have project management expertise, and this contains about 11 attributes that the project manager needs to master in order to become efficient and have project management expertise. Around it, we wrap the core leadership skills, and there are 10 of those that we have to focus on. And we wrap it around the project management expertise because the two actually work together. Being risk smart is all about knowing what is around you and being aware of the environment. And what we did as part of the model was actually brought it out, and that's why it's actually drawn at the top in a kind of a circle, half circle fashion, because it's overarching. It's keeping an eye on everything. No matter what we do when it comes to leadership, no matter what we do when it comes to project management, we have to be risk smart and we have to be aware that everything we do deals with risk. And then we bring in accountability-based behavior, and we actually put it at the bottom, and you could just picture this as kind of two hands being held together. And really what it's trying to show here is that just in case we drop something, whether when it comes to risk, leadership, or project management, we catch it under accountability, because accountability is about not letting anything drop. It's about doing what you said you were going to do and taking it to completion. So when you take these four different elements and put them together, you have what we refer to as a project management leadership model, and this is really what the book is all about. So as I mentioned, those four are referred to them as components, and then each of them have a number of attributes. And let's review one attribute, for example, that's found in core leadership. It's about demonstrate your competence. And remember, we reviewed this as an item when we were talking about general leadership at the beginning. We talked about competence, but this is a little bit more than that. It's about demonstrating your competence. It's about being proactive, showing people that you're in fact competent and you're building your competence. So being competent is not about being an expert in every area, but having enough skill and experience to make effective decisions. Like I tell the people I work with is, I surround myself with smart people, and you're the ones that are actually going to help us succeed. I'm not just here to make the tough decisions, and that's really what it's all about. Clearly understand the basics of project management. You continually train to improve your skills, and for example, this webinar is an excellent example of that. We're here to actually learn more things. Ensure you listen to subject matter experts, people around you that are experts in their areas. One of the largest complaints from engineers and other disciplines, for example, contracts or even procurement people, is their decisions get overridden. You have to make sure that you listen to these subject matter experts and take into account all the aspects associated with making any decision. Take the time to study your leadership style and choose the one that suits you best. Now, this is a tough one. You will ask, well, what do you mean by my leadership style? Well, we all have different types of leadership styles. We can be authoritative. We can be laissez-faire, where we just kind of let it go. We can be transactional, which is very just give me this, give me that. Everybody has their own style, and you need to understand what that style is before you actually become a better leader, because you may have to adjust your style. Hey, Melanie, I seem to have lost a little pointer here.
Did okay.
Oh, there we go.
You see it? Okay.
No, I got it. So get involved in the PM community, but also get involved in a leadership community. And this is very, very important. And you would say, well, how do I get involved in a leadership community? How do you do that? Where do you find the leadership community? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You follow established thought leaders, and that's what we refer to those in their leadership, people that are subject matter experts when it comes to leadership. And you follow these individuals to learn from them and to get those those excellent nuggets by which you can actually learn and grow. And this is where LinkedIn and Twitter are so extremely powerful. And the reason that they're powerful is you can use these tools to select who you're going to follow, and the information comes right to your device, and you don't have to waste the time to go find it. So this is an excellent time management tool on top of that. So now what you're having is you have relevant information coming to you when it comes to leadership, and it's amazing how much you can learn by just taking 10, 15 minutes a day and just reading what other people are writing and their thoughts. So if you're looking for examples on who to follow, feel free to check out my Twitter account. Mine's open, and you can see all the various individuals that I follow or follow me. But there are a couple, though, that do stand out. Mr. Ken Blanchard, he's the individual that actually came up with situational type of leadership theory, and he's actually very good and he has very, very sound advice. And Jim Koos. and he's the co-author of the Leadership Challenge, and he's actually the one that I referred to as part of that survey that we mentioned at the beginning. Those two individuals offer very, very good, frequent, yet practical advice, which I believe would be very good for you to follow up on. So here's another question, very quickly. And this comes actually out of the book because one of the powerful aspects of the book is it allows you to make assessments. We always have to be in a position to assess ourselves and to be assessed by others. Sometimes that can be a very humbling kind of experience, but it's actually something that is required in order for us to get better. So if you remember the circle that I referred to as a leadership model, it had 4 elements or 4 components: project management expertise, the core leadership skills, the risk-smart attitude, and the accountability-based behavior. Remember putting our hands together and making sure that we catch everything. So I'd like for you to take the time right now and just do a very quick assessment on where you think you stand against these without knowing their proper definitions. Where do you stand? Do you think you're weak, average, or strong? Now, Melanie, I'm not going to ask you to answer this one.
I was ready. I was ready.
Oh, okay. You want to share with us? That'd be great if you wanted to.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I do hold a certificate in project management. So, and I've learned from you and other great subject matter experts. So I would find myself on the continuum of average to strong and project management expertise. Core leadership, I look forward to learning more. So I would say I'm average, but I have, again, some foundational knowledge. Risk smart attitude, I had come from 11 years of experience in continuing education and higher education. So I would normally at a time say I was strong, but because I'm new to Oregon State, I would say I'm weak because I don't know my environment and I'm still navigating that environment. So it's amazing how quickly you can go from strong to weak. So I don't know that you could assess me on that. And then accountability, I would say strong. I mean, I would never let anything drop. So I think I have that make it happen attitude. So anyway, that was a truth serum right there. But maybe Emily and Stephanie would like to share as well. I know Emily did have a question that came through. She finds it difficult to balance her leadership role with many details that are necessary to accomplish goals. So she was wondering if you had suggestions on that balance.
Well, that's a very good question. It's always this, and perhaps I'll refer to it as macro management versus micromanagement, and making sure that you don't spend too much time in the details. And the best way of doing that is actually sitting down with your team and setting expectations. It's been my experience, and I've been blessed to have worked with excellent teams in the past, is when I've actually detailed to them my expectations and what I wanted them to do and really what I was looking for, they just embraced it and made it happen. And I realized that was a very effective way of me stopping to get into the details because I let them answer to the details as long as we would check in every once in a while. So perhaps that's something that would be of benefit to you to give a try in your day-to-day activities. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah.
All right, so what we can do now is, now that we've kind of taken a look at this, and to be honest with you, it's the answer is people are all over the map when it comes to the initial assessment, and where we tend to rate ourselves higher than we are in certain cases, and in other cases we tend to rate ourselves a little bit lower than what we are when compared to other inputs. So that's why if we do this, which is keep in mind that when we do our leadership and we do our model, we have to keep all these items in parallel, and all components must be practiced simultaneously to be successful. If we kind of set that picture and knowing that we will have gaps and improve, the question we are asked is, where do we honestly identify these gaps? So how do we do that? We have our own bias on how we answer the question, but how else can you get this? But it's actually very simple. You ask the same question to your team, and you ask the same question to your boss or your supervisor. How would they rate you against it? And this is where, if you're looking for a sign on how you're doing, this is it. in certain, in depending on what literature you read, sometimes these are referred to as kind of 360 type of evaluations or something very similar where you kind of look around you and you get input from people that are around you. But this is where it gets to be very, very interesting because what you'll find most of the time is what you think about yourself is not how people perceive you. And you have to actually pull these together, sit down with a champion who's willing to work with you and figure out, all right, if this is my initial assessment, how can I improve? And the way you actually do that when you use this book is if you actually go through all the different components and the attributes, you'll find at the end that there's a very detailed assessment. So project management expertise is broken into 11 areas, and core is leadership is into 10, risk is into 5, and accountability is into 5. And you actually have a very detailed assessment. And then what you do is you actually sit down with a champion that you're working with and let them do it as well. It has to be somebody who's familiar with you so they can make a true assessment. But then what we offer in the book is actually guidance at the end on how to bridge these gaps and how to get better. And what you'll find is when you first do it, you'll probably be floating around the average side of things. And what we want to make sure is that we build it up to get to the strong side of things. And this is where a lot of work is required. But it's work that it's actually very simple to do. You have to be aware of it. And it's actually very, very satisfying. So keep this in mind. You can just kind of give this a try tomorrow perhaps, or with colleagues later on, is do an initial assessment and ask somebody else to do one for you. And let me know how you make out. It'd be kind of interesting to hear from you. So now that we're done this, let's review our key takeaways. We understand that management and leadership are not the same. Remember, we broke that out, and that's how we came up with leadership being something that needed to be further broken out that included accountability and risk. We understand that it takes true leadership to drive today's aggressive and complex projects, and we explain why that is, because it's not simply just management, it's actually project management leadership. And there are several components and attributes that lead to that, and we talked about that. We mentioned that into that circle, which is known as a project management leadership model, and it's actually covered off in the material in the book. But more importantly, my message to everyone that I deal with is a true leader is not worried about asking questions and is not necessarily worried about being right or wrong. Reaching out is a strength for a leader, and it's not a weakness. I've been in scenarios before where the atmosphere was that you were kind of shunned to ask questions, and that's absolutely incorrect. You have to help build an environment that asking questions is okay, and that's why I say reaching out is a strength, and it's not a weakness. And some contact information. So you can look me up on the website. You can send me an email. I'm an easy find on LinkedIn, and as I mentioned before, if you want to look me up on Twitter and see who's following me or who I'm following when it comes to the leadership side, feel free. And if you want to follow some of those individuals, I encourage you to do so. And Melody, that wraps it up.
Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you very much. So there's, I'm sure, more questions. Start chatting them to us, and we'll get those answered. I'm going to take back the controls a minute. I just want to be able to fill some time so we can get your questions in. I know that you probably have more questions for Laszlo. Wanted just to talk with you briefly about what we're doing here with Oregon State and further the partnership with Laszlo and Volvi and Associates. So a new initiative here in our business is corporate education. PACE now offers employee education and e-learning. We partner with experts, we partner with associations and organizations to train employees and focus on employee training where they are. So our courses are taught by subject matter experts like Laszlo that we heard from today, who have reached a pinnacle in their careers and want to coach your employees. And we, starting this winter, we're going to range in a lot of different programming, one being project management, offering that certificate, but others in digital marketing, analytics, Six Sigma Lean, leadership, of course, understanding that situational model that he spoke about, business analysis, and contract management. So our curriculum is theory-based, remaining practical and application, and students learn through case studies and hands-on projects to help you tackle business objectives. So here I have listed a few different ways to collaborate and models of training. So again, consulting with you or your company, we can offer individual courses that range from 4 to 40 hours, certificate programs from 24 to 200 hours. And that certificate program is an in-depth treatment of knowledge. And that's what we'll be rolling out, about 10 different certificate programs for companies, from anywhere from 3 to 8 classes. So for example, project management will be more like 5 classes, 20 hours of length in each. So yeah, and then custom e-learning. And so e-learning is something that PACE has done for several years, and it's a custom solution for companies, a self-paced training for employees. And we have instructional designers, writers, multimedia artists, technologists that focus on e-learning and the custom design of that solution for your company. And so we can even do a hybrid of all three that I've just described. And it can be an e-learning foundational platform first, and then a consultation customized on-site training down, if there's more education and more applicable development that needs to happen. And so I really want to drive home the delivery options are flexible and convenient. And for staff at any level, we can do, again, online, both instructor led, similar to what we're doing today. We also use Google Hangout in many of our courses. So it can be asynchronous or synchronous, hybrid, um, and any combination that really fits your need. And so I want to keep you all aware of our project management certificate that's coming out this winter, and we look forward to sending you more information about that, our alignment with industry standards, and those that will be coaching you and coaching the professionals in the courses, and Laszlo being one. Um, and I look forward to and serving as your partner. You obviously have learned a lot about me today, but I ensure that you will have a top quality experience here at Oregon State. So thanks for your time. I don't see too many more questions, Laszlo. We must have gone through them pretty thoroughly here. We had a few new people join us. Welcome. We did record our session today, and so it will be available in the next 24 hours. Laszlo did share all of his contact information. Here is my contact information. I'm happy to talk with you offline further about anything that we discussed today. So is Laszlo as well. And we look forward to serving you. So Laszlo, on behalf of my team here at PACE, I want to thank you for your time, sharing your knowledge about the power of project management leadership with all of us. Would you like to close with final thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. It was great working with you and the team and be associated with OSU. I apologize for the coughing. A couple of times there I went into a little bit of a coughing fit, but winter is starting a little bit early up here in Ottawa, so it's just part of the game. But I'm passionate. I'm passionate about project management. I'm passionate about leadership. And if there's anybody who would like to have further information on the topic or even just ask a few questions, I will make the time to make sure that I provide answers and help the individuals where I can. So thank you very much again.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.